So welcome back to a new day on this amazing quest that you are undertaking, where you're going to build this close and connected relationship with your children. So yesterday saw us discussing two of the most highly toxic mythologies in modern day parenting, the mythology of happiness and success. But unfortunately, these are not the only toxic patterns we have unconsciously imbibed from our culture. What? There's more? Yes, there is indeed more stuff we can unlearn and undo. And I know it seems like a lot, but again, as you flow with me and this quest, you will begin to see yourself shedding and releasing all this extra weight that culture has been putting onto you that you didn't even realize you were carrying. So ultimately, while it feels a lot at first, eventually you are going to feel lighter and freer without all this extra weight you've been carrying. Basically, I want you to realize that all these mythologies, all these messages, these belief systems that we've ingrained from culture, I want you to realize that they have one thing in common. They are all based on fear. And if something is based on fear, it can never be positive, can it? So why is fear such an insidious problem? Well, because fear creates control. And control mostly, if not always, obstructs connection. Conscious parenting is all about moving away from that control-heavy, hierarchical, dogmatic way of parenting to connection. And therefore, a huge piece of this is letting go of our fear-based paradigms. So as we begin to awaken to our patterns, we begin to notice that there are such a thing called cultural archetypes. And these archetypes abound daily living. They literally seep into every aspect of our daily patterns and deeply influence our moods, our behaviors, how we are with our children. And we don't even realize how they are unconsciously ruling our psyches. So take the archetype of beauty, for instance. Maybe we've been raised on a definition, a very strict conventional definition of beauty, and have come to define it as a certain body type, a certain skin color. So this beauty archetype, most of us have deeply buried within us, so much so, we don't even realize it's an archetype that we've inherited. We think it's the way to live, to be. So we don't even realize that we've absorbed it, and we certainly don't realize that we're passing it to our children. So what if then one of our children now doesn't fit this archetype of beauty? If we're unconscious to this archetype within us, then we will unconsciously push that child toward meeting that archetype subtly, or sometimes not so subtly. We may unconsciously shame and denigrate them, make them feel lesser than, just because they don't fit into our conventional idea of beauty. So take the notion maybe of, say, love and relationships. Perhaps we've absorbed the idea that love and relationships must culminate in marriage in our 20s or our early 30s. And it must have the outcome of a few children. So then, what happens when our children cannot do this or do not want to follow this prescription? And perhaps their wish is to express their sexuality in a completely different way that doesn't fit the norm. So then, how do we react? How do we embrace them? How do we connect with them? From success to love to achievement to religion to sexuality to relationships, all of these have been ensconced within cultural archetypes. They've been defined in a very particular conventional way. And it's up to us when we awaken to become aware of how we have imbibed these cultural archetypes. When we are not aware of what we've imbibed, then what naturally happens is that we unconsciously puppeteer ourselves and our children to meet these archetypes. I mean, you've met a zillion women and men who try to fit into the mold of this perfect woman or the perfect man. What they're doing in essence is allowing themselves to be puppeteered blindly, sheep to the slaughterhouse, to these archetypes that they don't even realize that they have a choice to release. Perhaps your own parents tried to fit archetypes onto you. Maybe you remember feeling claustrophobic and suffocated by what they imposed onto you. And it's quite likely that your parents did. So rigid are these inherited archetypes within our belief systems that we almost always condemn those who do not live in accordance with them. We label them. Maybe we label them the term successful when they follow our ways, when they check our box, when they fit our prescription. And then we subconsciously or consciously use the term failure for those who go astray. In all inadvertent ways, we're constantly judging our children if they fit the archetype or they don't. So let me tell you the story of one of my clients, Samantha, who knew early on that she wanted to be a dancer when she was young. However, she grew up in this family of highly ambitious doctors who naturally expected her to follow their path. Around the age of maybe 12, her parents, fearing that their daughter was obsessed with dance, guess what they did? They stopped all her dance-related activities, stating that these were causing a detriment to her severely linear path to achievement. Samantha was devastated. She was forced to give up the one thing she was most passionate about, and she was literally contouring her entire future around her dance passion. She had to give that up. But in order to meet her parents' expectations, she had no choice. They wanted her to be a certain person in their vision, and no matter what she did, unless she was that, she would feel ostracized. When I met Samantha late into her 40s, now a successful doctor, she was experiencing severe emotional turmoil. She was experiencing burnout and depression. She simply was unable to find a way to access joy in her inner world or her life. We began to trace back her patterns. We began to go back into her history, and she was able to reveal to me the acute pain of a child who had to give up their authentic self in order to adopt a path according to her parents' prescription. Samantha then understood the price she had to pay. She figured out that that price of absconding her true self, of leaving her true self on the sidewalk of her childhood, was a severe price. She resolved, she immediately declared that she would not be projecting her fantasies onto her children anymore. She would commit herself to allowing her children to follow their own calling, their own destiny, no matter how different it was from hers. Because now, firsthand, she understood the price that she had paid and the cost that it took from her to follow her parents' agenda. I can tell you about a countless number of clients who in some way or the other were forced to abscond, betray their own inherent truth. And each one of those clients have recounted and remembered the pain of this loss. They were able to palpably notice the exact moment that they departed from their true self. Perhaps you remember a moment where you left your true self behind. Whether around success or wealth or competition or pain, our parents and our culture's ideas, the archetypes we've inherited from them on how we should negotiate these areas in our life, constantly obstruct our capacity to live our fullest selves. And because we are not our true selves, because we are not holding on to our authentic voice, because we are not honoring and celebrating who we naturally are, then isn't it quite natural that we will fail to honor and celebrate our children for who it is they are? And right there, we plant the seeds of disconnection. So it is only when we dare to go back to our past, become enlightened and aware of all the inherited cultural and parental archetypes that we have imbibed, only then we will be able to differentiate between our needs, our expectations, and those of our children. And this awareness, again, it's all about awareness, more awareness and more awareness. It's this awareness that will give us the power of choice, of now, in this moment, mindfully discerning what we need, what we are expecting, what we are fantasizing, versus what our children are expressing as their authentic truth. So for today's task, again, it's a task of reflection. You may wonder why the path of consciousness has so much reflection. Well, because the path is an inward path. It is a path that detaches from the external world. So reflection is a key component of raising the true self. We cannot be on this path of awareness and awakened consciousness without going inward and being introspective. So for today's task, take out your journal. I want you to write maybe 1 or 2 short sentences for each of the following categories. I want you to reflect on what you believe about these key archetypes, and let the responses come naturally. Don't take too much time to construct them or nurture them in a particular way. This is not about a poetry competition. I just want you to write what comes intuitively and naturally, automatically. So write a few sentences on, and I'm going to give you a list, and you can reflect on this later. On success, achievement, happiness, the archetype of wealth, beauty, status, popularity. What is popularity for you? What does that mean for you? Love. How is love expressed? What does love mean and connote for you? Family. The archetype of marriage, religion, education. These are the core archetypes that rule our lives. And under each sentences, reflect. Where did these messages come from in your life? Was it mom? Was it dad? Was it culture? And do you see if it's impacting your relationship with your children? Do you see how mom's ideas about love or marriage or relationships is now showing up in your life with your children? This is the power of becoming aware of cultural archetypes. You begin to see, oh my goodness, I'm acting to my child just the way my mother acted toward me. And maybe it's positive, maybe not so positive. The goal is not to judge whether it's good or bad. The goal is to become aware. So this big step of discerning cultural archetypes is another step in elevating your consciousness. And again, as we elevate, I've been repeating this over and over, but it can never get old enough. As you elevate, as you raise your level of consciousness, as you dare to look in the mirror, as you serve your inner wholeness, as you heal your inner child, you will clear the path, forge the route to the greatest connection with your child. I will see you tomorrow.